Ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals, madames et messieurs, welcome to this tutorial on a Parabellum wargame, Conquest, the last argument of kings and or first blood, Old Dominion Xhiliarch. You see the model I've painted in this tutorial here on the turntable, and the focus of it is a heavy patina armor and worn red cloth. So you see this miniature painted step by step with each detail sped up to 250%, and I hope you can follow the parts. If you like a special topic like painting the red cloth, just go to the timeline, or better to say video description down below, and check this part of the video. I hope you enjoy, and leave your comments and feedback down under the video. So let us start with the black primed miniature. I primed the black cause some of the areas couldn't be painted if you built the model completely, but if it's black it looks like shadows, so it doesn't matter that much. I start with the bronze armor and mix a brown and a bronze tone and stipple it on with a sponge, a heavy stippling for the base tone of the armor. If you want to know, the colors I use are Dryad Bark and Sycorax Bronze from Citadel, but in the main part I will declare which color tone it is, and sometimes I will tell you which color it is exactly. So I stipple on these colors to give it, right from the start, a rough, used, worn appearance and no clean lines that indicate polished armor. Next step is a lighter sponging with the base bronze tone of Sycorax Bronze, and keep in mind that you always can leave the patina at the stage you are at if you are pleased with it. Not all of you want that heavy of a patina, I guess. I tend to paint a real hard, natural feeling patina. So let us start with it. Vallejo, a turquoise color, mixed with water, put into some places and then moved around the miniature with a damp brush to apply it like a wash or a glaze. This gives a first light patina coating that doesn't interfere that much with the bronze tone. And if I applied it around all the bronze parts and move the pigments around the miniature, I use a hair dryer to blow the miniature or the color dry, cause I only paint this one miniature in this session and I don't want to wait roughly 45 minutes or an hour to let it dry. If you batch paint, you can use the drying process for the next miniatures. Next up is the next patina step with a lighter turquoise. This is Citadel's technical color Xhiliarch Oxide. It is diluted enough to paint it right from the pot on the miniature, and I move the pigments around with a dampened brush. Later, when you see the brush moving out of the frame, it's mostly that I wash it real fast in water and come back with the still damp brush. I don't got any idea where to apply the patina in the first place, so I move the brush with my feeling, with my gut feeling where the color needs to be. And the next step is a sponging of this Xhiliarch Oxide, cause previously we applied it like a wash and the highlight areas or the upper parts of the miniature or the detail work wouldn't be covered that much, so I stipple it on that even the small edges would receive some of this color. Now an even lighter turquoise tone, nearly white tone from Vallejo. You can apply it like a glaze, like I do, or you need a short bristled brush and a toothpick and splat it on like some people do their blood effects on miniatures to get an uneven pattern of small white dots all around the armor. This would be a natural occurring thing on patina too. So it is up to you. I like to apply it with a brush like this, like a glaze. And then the kind of main stage of patina is done. To give it a more natural feeling, we need some shifting colors in the patina. Maybe you want to take a look on some pictures of bronze statues or monuments around the world, how they look, and you often see a brownish yellowish color shift in some areas and or a greenish oxide shift depending on the material's composition. And before I apply this natural color shifting, I apply a bit more of a brown stippling and afterwards of a bronze stippling. Cause the reason all this is thought through. The reason is that if you take a look at those bronze monuments, you can see that some of those got areas where there is no patina. For example, a monument of a person, and the local folklore is if you touch the nose, it will bring you joy, peace and happiness. The people around there would go to the monument and touch the nose. And those areas that are touched, there is less patina. And to give something of this vibe for my miniature, I apply a coat of stippled dried bark, so brown, and another coat of stippled Xhiliarch bronze, where the patina is even more removed. Not by people putting their hands on these areas, but to give it a more natural feeling. While the guy is moving around, maybe the armor is scraping over each other, or the coat is moving on the armor so that it will remove the patina. For the color shift into a greenish oxide color, I take a Citadel paint and apply it heavy diluted as a wash to give a more greenish vibe here and there. And there it's also like a gut feeling where I apply the color. I don't got a reference picture or something like this. I just fiddle around with the paint here and there. And I guess if you paint your undead, heavily weathered miniatures, you will get a feeling after the second or third miniature where to apply those color. And if you look correctly, I try not to put those color to the face to give it a more of a turquoise focus point there, so that the watcher or the guy, the gal, the person that will look at this miniature later get a focus point around the face, so that it doesn't get too distracted of all the other details. After this, there is a beige brownish tone that would work as a yellow color shift or yellowish color shift when I take it on like a glaze here and there. And even more of those glazing layers over each another would give a fine color shift and a natural feeling on the miniature. You can go back and forth with thin layers to get a feeling how the miniature looks. Important, while glazing with this technique, don't let the color pool so that you don't get heavily accented recesses. When you overdo it, just grab a previous color and glaze it on. as I did here. I wasn't happy with that much of this color, so I layer another glaze over it so that the yellowish or greenish color underneath is still showing through, but the saturation isn't that hard. And for a more natural feeling, to tie it all together, I apply another glazing layer of a brighter turquoise color like Xhiliarch oxide next, so that this dark turquoise color isn't sticking out that much. And then you could be done with the armor if you want. If you got some areas where there is metal plating with a silver metal, this would be the part where you could paint this, like maybe on the cataphractoid or the mounted strategist. Then you can base color it with a dark silver tone, like I do here with Citadel's Iron Warrior. And then I stipple on Lead Belcher and Runefang Steel. It is important to stipple this color with a brush or a sponge, like I do here, to break up the sharp lines on the highlights. Cause you can trick the brain when the eye is seeing a theoretical line on the edge of a blade, but you don't see a straight line through. Instead you see small dots on this line. It will translate to your brain that there is a rough edge, and that is a worn material. Next up, I apply some more of the bronze tone here and there for a bit more of a definition, that it doesn't look too messy on the armor. And you will see on the turntable image that I applied some rusty pigments from Vallejo on the blade. I missed this point in the video, just to let you know there is something more. This rust is applied later. Each other color that is not the armor, not any metal, is painted with a dark brown tone, a dried bark, and the skin is painted with a beige tone like Rakarth's flesh. To accentuate the leather parts, I take a brighter brown like a Catachan flesh in this tone and highlight the center pieces of these small leather patches. Next up, Gorthor brown, an even brighter brown tone. Focus on the center patches, or the center of the patches, and some of these small folding lines here and there, and then we're good to go with this leather. If you want to see how to paint leather straps and belts like on the other Auto Dominion miniatures, Legionaries, Praetorians or else, I will use these techniques on the next tutorial I want to paint, and I guess it would be a Praetorian and or a Bucephaloi Minotaur guy. So keep that in mind, and maybe you want to sub to the channel that you don't miss this tutorial in the future. Next up, the small binding pieces between the leather patches are painted with a brownish tone or brownish beige tone. In this occasion it is Steel Legion Drab, and these small fabric pieces are accentuated with a Baneblade brown and afterwards with Karak stone. And as you've seen here, I've painted some small lines in these patches with Baneblade brown to give the appearance of some small scrapes on the leather parts. But this technique, as told previously, would be focused more on the next tutorial when I paint leather belts and stuff like this. So, last accent with Karak stone to brighten these small pieces up even more. And if you miss some, it doesn't matter, cause old worn materials could change their coloration here and there. So it's not that bad when you miss out on a piece, because this one could be recolored by age or time. Next up, the skin tone. The previous color was Rakarth Flesh, and now I glaze it with Citadel's shade Drukai Violet. As you can see, a violet or a purple shade to give it a more of an unholy vitality. And this glazing process also is used to get some definition between the fingers or in between some muscles or the facial area. After I dried the shade with a hairdryer, the next step is some highlights to give it more of a dramatic definition. You could do it, you don't need to do it. This color tone is fine by its own, but I want to get a step further to show it to you. I take Rakarth Flash again and apply the color onto the fingers, on the upper parts, on the muscles, focus more on the knuckles and on the small bone joints here and there. And at the facial part, at the forehead and the side of the face that is showing underneath the mask, and the vertical muscles that are part of the neck, as you can see here while I'm painting. And you don't need to apply that much of this Rakarth Flesh. The violet purplish tone underneath could shine through to give it this unholy, undead appearance. In the later stages of the video you could see, or maybe you could see, that I painted the eye with a reddish, orange, yellow tone. I skipped this one on the tutorial too, because it's not that much to show. It is a reddish tone in the eye, a orangey pupil, and one yellow dot in the middle, so it's not that much of painting magic, because it's nothing like an object source lighting or glowing eyes or this. It's just a reddish orangey eye. So the next color is an off-white, in this case palette witch flesh, on some of the areas like the knuckles and into the face to give it more definition. And then we're done with the skin tone. Next up, we take our time with the rat fabric and these helmets thing. On German it is called Helmbusch. I don't know the English translation right now off the top of my head, so excuse me. I apply a dark red tone. In this occasion it is corn red, and start from the middle of the cloak downwards and work my way a bit up to the top parts, and keep more of this brown tone showing through on the upper parts to give it a more worn, darkish appearance, like you can see here. Next up is an even more off-red or desaturated color. This is Wasdaga Red from Citadel. I apply it with a really damp brush. You can see it here. It's like I've diluted the paint with water or thinner medium on a wet palette. And use the same technique. Start roughly in the middle of the cloth and work my way downwards, that the more saturated color tone is on the lower end of this cloth, And in the next part I take these previous desaturated red tone and a brownish reddish light tone. This is Night Quest of Flash from Citadel, and mix it 1:1 or in equal parts and apply it like previously, but I start on the lower third roughly of this cloth and apply it on the folds on these small edges. And in addition, I apply some vertical or diagonal lines to give it the appearance of torn fabric. Some small scrapes and defects in the cloth that would be applied to give it a more natural feeling that I focus on with this color scheme. This natural, more down-to-earth feeling, not these high-end painting, heavy edge highlights like these quote-unquote gamey miniature. I want a more natural appearance here. And you can see by the time I've spent on the armor and on the reds that this is the part that I focus on while painting the miniature. I get a red green complementary contrast in between the armor's greenish parts and the red cloth, and also I get from the turquoise patina and the more highlighted parts like yellowish turquoise complementary. And in addition, it is a warm cold color tone contrast, so this would work very good. Next up is a coat of the same colors but mixed, 1 part red, 2 part of the Night Quest of Flash. Even more worn parts or areas here and there, small dots, small lines to give the appearance of worn fabric. The fabric should be worn in the lower parts of the coat, because this is the area where it most often would touch ground or some foliage and would be worn faster. If you got a Xhiliarch model, like with a shield in its left hand, hold in front of the torso, it could appear that around the shield is even some more worn fabric on the shoulder, cause maybe enemy sword blows hit the shield and roughly hit the fabric on the shoulder, so that some of those more damaged areas are there on the shoulder. Keep that in mind, that the fabric is worn the most there on the areas where it mostly touches something else. Next up is Night Quest or Flash purely from the pot, to focus on the folds in the fabric and put even more small dots and lines here and there in a random pattern where I think they should appear. As you can see here. And if you don't want to get that heavy on this color tone, it is okay. Maybe you want to go first coat of corn red, then 1 coat of Wasdaka, and 1 coat of this Night Questor for some rough worn details. It is okay. It doesn't need to transition that smooth. It is up to you. I want to know from you if you want this smooth transition or a more gamey, harder highlight stage. You could write it in the comments down below. What you prefer, I want to know sincerely. And after I've done this stage, there is an even brighter stage where the cloth is desaturated the most. This is Karak stone, some dots and lines here and there, and the lowest part on the cloth where it's worn the most. Sorry that I'm not that much in focus on this part. I hold the miniature a bit lower under the camera, more to the cutting mat, so I lost focus a bit. Excuse me, please. But I hope you can see what I've done here nonetheless. With this stage, the main focus parts of the miniatures are done. It is the patina armor and the reddish worn cloth. Then there are some other details like the fur and the base to paint. I want to go with a natural feeling on the fur and the natural feeling on the base, so that it would stick to the scheme. But before we go there, I need to touch up some mistakes here and there. If you maybe spilled some of the red on the armor here and there, on some edges, it doesn't matter that much. You can repair it with Xhiliarch bronze later. And oh, I screwed up. I paint the fur coat first. Okay, here we go. The fur coat is a dark anthracite color. It is Corval's Black by Citadel, painted roughly on the fur. It doesn't need to cover the area 100%. Some of the brown could show through, cause it is worn fur. It is maybe a bit moldy. It is old. It is not in that good of a shape, so it doesn't need to cover the areas perfectly. Next up, a gray tone to focus on these small fur clumps and paint them by brush. And on some occasions I use it like a wet brushing and go against the structure of the detail to give it a more rough appearance. And as I told you before, on the metal you can trick the brain with these techniques where there is not that consistent of a coloration on an area, to trick it that is a worn fabric or worn fur and stuff like this. And use this technique. Trick the eye, trick the brain, and get a good painting result. So I work around all these small fur patches here and there. And luckily the video is sped up to 250% so that we don't need to sit and wait here for 2 or 4 hours. And keep in mind that there are some fur bits showing through on the front side. And then I lighten up the fur with a brighter gray tone. This one would be applied like the previous one too, but focused more on the upper part of the miniature, on the shoulder and the middle back parts, cause you can focus the eye of the beholder, you can focus the eye of the viewer with the brighter color tone on the upper part of the miniature. And as I apply the base color from the airbrush later, I could hit the lower parts of the mantle, the cloak, or the fur, and if the fur is too bright in the lower parts and I hit it with a brown from the airbrush, it wouldn't look that good. So I don't focus that much on the lower parts. Some lines here and there. Pick out some of these spots that need to be brighter. Just follow your gut feeling. Don't highlight each and every fur blob, just where you think it would feel right. Keep in mind, it is old, messy, moldy fur. Maybe this fur was a whitish fur before. Maybe a hermelin, this white-ish fur with black dots, but it's totally worn off and it's just appearing gray, moldy. So this is fine for this kind of miniature. So we're doing everything right. And next up is the stage with tricking the eye, applying small dots and small lines on the fur parts to give it more of a worn appearance. The miniatures mold, the details are real fine, are real sharp, but I want to give it a more rough, patchy appearance. If I paint straight lines everywhere, it got the same appearance like on a nicely polished blade. It would look fine, it would look awesome, but this would be contra to this, what I try to achieve with this color scheme. And now I leave you some time to breathe while I paint the last bits here. So, the previous mentioned touch-ups for overspilled color here and there, or maybe I got the feeling that I need to apply some more highlights on several areas when I see the fully painted miniature right now. So I get a better feeling where I need more of a bronze tone to give it more definition. As you've seen previously, I painted the nose, as I've told you in the description for these rubbed off bronze statue patina. It is the nose. Funny. And the next thing is the base. I've often been asked how I do the natural looking bases, so I would guide you through. I applied a Vallejo dark flesh tone with the airbrush, so that you see there is a muddy or dirty feet to be seen. And then I apply Steely Drab, so a drabby beige tone with a brush, dry brush. And I apply this one on the whole base, even knowing that most of it would be obscured by the foliage, but I don't know where the patches will go later, so I apply it on the whole base. Next up, a bit brighter tone to give the edges in front more definition. And then we go on with a brighter beige tone for the skulls. Yes, I love skulls on my bases. And in contrast to everything is natural and feeling good, I like the skulls not to be obscured by too much paint and too much natural feeling. So I picked them with several beige and bony and an off-white color so that they would show well on the base. If you want to go more on a natural appearance, you could leave it at maybe this stage and apply a coat of glaze with maybe dark green for a mossy appearance, brown for a old moldy appearance, or maybe yellowish for maybe a wettish appearance. Pick the color you like when you want to glaze it. I want to go full highlight on these skulls, so excuse me on this little thing. And keep in mind, just saying, keep in mind, if you want to go with a base that is more sand and desert, just paint it with beige and sandy tones, or use completely different basing techniques. It's up to you. It's your miniature. Don't don't do as I told you here when you're not that keen with this basing technique. But as much people, or many people, told me, I will show you it here. Next up, some bronze on the legs to give the appearance that some of the dirt has rubbed off while walking, while standing around, while looking here and there for the army. This is more for this natural appearance, that the feet are not that dark, dirty, muddy. And then we apply foliage, tufts and stuff like this. First up, tufts. This is gamer's grass. This is dense green and dry green. I apply it with a pair of pincer. Is this a pincer? Yes, it's a pincer, isn't it? Or isn't? Ah, come on. I apply it like you can see here with some super glue and some tools and push the tuft with the X-Acto knife into the small recesses that it would stick better. And after you apply it, give it the time that the super glue can dry totally, because we would apply white glue later, and super glue and white glue give us a chemical reaction that it would dry with these small whitish sausages and bubbles, and we don't want this messy shit. So leave it enough time before you apply the white glue. And as a tuft is too big, just cut it down with your knife to the needed size. After all of this has dried, I use several products. Gale Force 9 for the flock. This is dirt foundation as first. This would give a mossy appearance. This one you can see here. And afterwards it's Gale Force 9 Spring Undergrowth for the more greenish natural clumps. And after this it is Green Stuff Natural Leaf Litter and Gamer's Grass paper, laser cut paper foliage, the lords and ladies in this case. And I apply the flock like you would do with a sand when you sand your base. Just apply it on the white glue and with a light blow push away all the greenish pieces that doesn't stick. And now I apply the Spring Undergrowth by Gale Force 9. First these yellowish garbage pieces that fallen off the thicker clumps, and at next some more white glue, and I apply these more clumpy pieces to give it a natural appearance. And yes, this is the whole stick, or the whole shtick with this thing. It should look natural and not that gamey. This is just my style. I hope you like this and you can feel the effort here. Natural leaf litter, some white glue here and there. Apply the litter with a damp brush, and afterwards apply a bit of the white glue on top of the leaves, so that they would be sealed in and doesn't be damaged later. When the white glue is dried completely, it's the same around when you apply the tufts. You don't want this chemical reaction between white glue and super glue. I apply a drop of super glue and Gamer's Grass, Lords and Ladies on the base, so that I got some more natural looking foliage. There is also the possibility to apply dump cane. They would look good with these basing techniques too. I used them on my city-states and will use them on the larger base like bucephaloi or cataphractoi rider. And after this had dried, I will touch up the foliage edges with green and the base edge with a brown tone. When the whole army is painted, I will apply Vallejo's matte varnish for all the miniatures to give it a mattish finish, and this is the final Xhiliarch model. I hope you like the model, and even more, I hope that you liked the tutorial and could take something home for your miniature painting. Let me know in the comments which was the most eye-opening step in this tutorial for you. Was it the worn cloth? Was it the patina? Or was it the natural looking base? I want to hear from you, and as you can see here, I applied pigment powder heavily diluted with water on the blade, and the orange-yellow eyes could be seen also. It was a blast, and I'm looking forward for the next tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment or a thumbs up or sub to the channel. Till then, keep on wargaming!